Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we're going into a few hoax stories because it is April 1st, and this is just a great opportunity to kind of highlight the other end of the spectrum as opposed to what me and Ruben normally dive into, focusing on the history and the possibility of sightings based on these cryptids. So again, I'm going to reiterate, these are hoaxes. So they're all related to cryptids, or paranormal or aliens, but they're not real. They're proven to be fake because of one person's wrongdoings that kind of blows it up into something else. But I thought this would be cool to talk about. Before we get into that, though, a couple of plugs. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca, find our blogs, website information there. You can also find us on our social media channels, Cryptid Clues on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Additionally, we're also on Patreon. You get ad-free exclusive early episodes there. And you can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. If you want to say hi, send us a story, talk, anything at all, we're one email away. But without further ado, this first encounter that we're going to talk about today actually was published out on April Fool's Day back in 1972. This one dives into the Loch Ness monster, actually, and it was the body of Nessie found, is what it was dubbed. So this took place on the morning of Friday, March 31st in 1972. There was a team of about 8 scientists that were together, and they were all having breakfast together, and I guess they were notified of a tip of something that occurred out on the loch. Originally, they were there on a joint mission to kind of prove the existence of the Loch Ness Monster initially, so they were going to go test out some new technology they developed, I guess, to kind of possibly, or maybe technology is the wrong word. They were going out to basically test some new possible lures, you could say. So when they were eating breakfast and everything, again, they got a tip that there was a large, dark object bobbing up and down in the waves, and this is about 300 yards offshore. Naturally, you come out here thinking you're going to try and lure out Nessie, and all of a sudden you get this tip, you're going to dive on that, and that's what they did. The leader of this team, Terrence O'Brien, had swung out into action and directed the team to the boat, and they headed out to investigate. And about 20 minutes later, roughly, still around in the morning, early a.m., they came back to shore dragging this bizarre object, which had appeared to be dead. And again, they're assuming this is the body of the Loch Ness Monster. Now, naturally, something like this, word is going to spread like wildfire. And within hours, the news of the discovery, again, was starting to spread all over the world. Television news anchors, everything just forming in our audiences. Hey, Loch Ness Monster has been found, it's dead, yada, yada, yada. And reporters start flooding in to just get more information at the loch. So the local residents, again, confirmed something weird had been dragged out of the water. And some people had claimed that when they touched it, they put their hand in its mouth, and it was like, okay, this is real. All right, this is like a living creature. It looked like a half bear, half seal, green in color, with a very horrific looking head, like a bear, but with flat ears. People were really genuinely shocked. So some reports came out that this creature was about like 12 to 18 feet in length, and could have weighed around like 1.5 tons. They said it had like a green body without scales, and was more so like a walrus and a seal mixed together. So the next morning, April 1st, this is when this discovery had actually hit the front page headlines around the world. This is when it was just going crazy and people were losing their minds now. So this kind of, and there's newspaper articles as well. There's an actually, I think, April 1st, 1972 headline in the Los Angeles Times. This is monster hauled out of Loch Ness. Green and scaly. So following this is when kind of things turn into like a little bit of a chase. So when the carcass was dragged back on shore, these scientists sent out a telegram to their boss, and then they quickly loaded the body into a truck and taken it off. They were trying to take it to a zoo for additional studying. And so naturally, like, you're scientists and you might be on the cusp of the most incredible discovery of the decade or the century, it's just fantastic. So when the local police had heard about this, I guess, again, totally justified, a lot of locals and the police were infuriated. These English scientists had just come in, removed one of Scotland's most famous tourist attractions, and decided to just take it away and just start studying on it. So they immediately reacted, and they, I believe they cited a 1933 Act of Parliament, and that prohibited the removal of unidentified creatures from Loch Ness, this is perfect that they had this in place, because again, it allowed them to run off, catch up to the team of scientists, and what are they going to do? They had to cooperate, pull off the side of the road, and basically followed everything as procedure. The police officers were not really sure what to do next. And what do you do next when you're dealing with something like this? So they decided, okay, we're going to confirm here. We're taking it to be examined by Scottish scientists. When it was brought to, I believe, Dunfermline, the nearest town, the police had basically searched and found, okay, here's some appropriate scientists that can examine this creature. And I believe his name was Michael Rushton. He was the general curator of the Edinburgh Zoo to come up and look at it. And so when Rushton had arrived, he walked around the carcass a few times, poked it once or twice, and just announced his verdict. It says it was indeed a strange creature, but it was not a lake monster. Instead, it was actually a bull elephant seal. And now their natural home is the South Atlantic Ocean, which is thousands of miles away from Scotland. And then the body also showed signs of having been frozen for an extended period of time. Rushton had told the press it's a typical member of its species. It's about 3 to 4 years old. And he's never known them to come near Great Britain. Their natural habitat is the South Atlantic, Falkland Islands, or South Georgia. And he doesn't know how long it's been kept in a deep freeze, but has obviously been done by some human hand. And then the confession comes after this. Because how a bull elephant seal exactly comes to be floating in Loch Ness was definitely a mystery until the next day. A hoaxer stepped forward to confess. His name was John Shields. He is the Flamingo Park Zoo's education officer, and he admitted to it being his doing. Shields explained that an expedition to the Falkland Islands had recently brought the seal back to the UK. It had lived briefly at the Dudley Zoo, but died soon after arrival. When he learned of this, Shields realized it offered an opportunity to prank his colleagues. He knew that they were going up to Loch Ness to actually search for Nessie. So Shields gained possession of this elephant seal, shaved off its whiskers, patted its cheeks with stones, and kept it frozen for a week. Then he dumped it in the loch and phoned in the tip to his colleagues so that he could ensure that they were the ones to find it. He timed the pranks so that the news of the discovery of the Loch Ness Monster would actually make headlines on April 1st for April Fool's Day. But again, he just had no idea it was going to be so blown out of hand. It was something he admitted to. And he also noted that the creature wasn't quite as impressive as initial press reports had claimed. It was only 9 feet long and weighed about 350 pounds, but still, it was a very strange thing, nonetheless, to be seen floating around in the loch. The police superintendent, he gave the press the final official verdict on the incident. It's just an April Fool's Day joke. So there is imagery. There's news articles, newspaper articles that talk about this thing. So again, having determined that the dead animal is not the Loch Ness Monster, police had no further interest in this. They returned the carcass to the team from the Flamingo Park Zoo. The team brought the seal back to the zoo where they put it back on ice and displayed it on crowds for a few days before properly disposing it. So there you go. It kind of turned into a very, very big story. However, the prank turned out to be, it had turned out to be unintended. 2 weeks later, there was a 28-year-old person named Norman Slater, who was a school teacher from Wisconsin. He went on a fishing trip in the Loch. While floating along, he had actually dipped his hand into the water. And he said that as soon as he did, he detected by means of extrasensory perception the presence of 6 large creatures in the water, what he calls a family of Loch Ness monsters. Slater said that he saw a particularly vivid image of a creature 70 to 90 feet in length with a large neck, a slim worm-like body, and a bottom portion was white while its top was dark brown and scaly. He said the creatures just seemed to be lying around on the bottom. And Slater also claimed to see images of underground passageways connecting both the loch to the sea. But Slater was a victim of bad timing. He complained that, despite the obvious scientific importance of his vision, because of the recent April 1st prank, he couldn't find any reporters willing to take him seriously. So there's a little interesting kind of like turnaround there to that. Again, something that you can think of. Whether it's just April Fool's joke or it's just a poor association and timing of Boy Who Cried Wolf, I guess you could say. And that's, again, one of the downsides to there being hoaxes out there that do occur, because it discredits the real, actual scenarios that take place. So, but I thought that nonetheless, this would be kind of a fun one just to kind of shout out. What else do we got here? We have the Brooksville Monster. I just want to say shout out to Hoaxes.org. I was just looking around online. Okay, what kind of cryptid hoaxes and stories that were debunked can we discover today? And this Hoaxes.org website, definitely check it out. They've got a whole whackload of cool things that you can dive into, all hoaxes of history and everything like that. It's definitely awesome that they've thrown together for the public here. But the Brooksville Monster. Reports of a giant monster with glowing eyes stalking the woods of Central Florida at night aroused the curiosity of 2 Tampa Tribune reporters. After interviewing locals, they discovered that this is not a real creature, actually a homemade spook created by a housewife who had fashioned it out of a bedsheet and a cow's skull. She actually had put a flashlight inside the skull, and she had tied this created monster up to a 100-foot rope between 2 trees and pulled it from side to side with a fishing line. So quite a brilliant orchestrated device and apparition. There's an imagery of her too here, but yeah, it's quite something. So definitely something worth checking out just to kind of read the backstory on it. But yeah, it's just one of those things that maybe it was Halloween. I couldn't tell you, but pretty ingenious. I don't know what her goal was. She just wanted to freak people out. Maybe the people coming on her property, like a human scarecrow, I guess you could say. But nonetheless, pretty cool. We also have this one, a Bigfoot related possible hoax. This is on August 27th, 1958. While working on a construction site in Northwest California, as a tractor operator named Jerry Crew, he had found a whole series of massive 16-inch footprints tracked through the mud. Due to the size of these prints, the media began referring to the creature, as Bigfoot, obviously. This led to the suspicion, though, however, because this man, Jerry Crew, was obviously working for a prank-loving boss. This boss was called Ray Wallace. And the suspicion was that he had created these prints by strapping cardboard feet to his boots and stomp around the mud. And again, this was confirmed when Wallace had died in 2002 and his family came clean with the whole story. So there are some people that are a little bit reluctant, however, and insist that these prints are legitimate Sasquatch tracks. And again, I have not deep dived into this. I just wanted it to be a little bit of a humorous story, but that is something that is... It is a thing. People do strap on these fake shoes or wooden boards and they stroll around and make it look like it was Sasquatch related. And so it seemed like Jerry Crew was definitely suspicious of his boss and suspiciously justified because Wallace apparently did execute just that. So let's see what we got here. You know what? I think I'm going to jump to a quick ad break and we'll be right back. And we are back. So this is interesting. This is a giant penguin of Clearwater, Florida. I've never heard of any giant penguins out there before, but I mean, heck, there's always a first. This is in February 1948. So it's always back to the footprints. There were giant three-toed footprints found on a Florida beach, and they look like they had been made by like an enormous sea turtle, except for the fact that they were spaced too far apart. So over the following months, more prints continued to be found. And then in November of 1948, a naturalist called Ivan Sanderson finally came in, examined some of them, and speculated they had been made by a vast penguin, 15 feet tall. The mystery wasn't fully solved until 1988. This is a solid 40 years later. This is absolutely astounding. When a local prankster named Tony Signorini admitted he had made them with the help of a friend. He had strapped cast iron monster print shoes to his feet and then stomped up and down along local beaches. And there's an image of him too wearing these things. These things look like actually dinosaur footprints, to be honest. But 40 years, I can't believe that. That's actually really, really funny. But it goes to show there is probably a whole multitude of cryptid sightings or cryptid encounters or evidence that people will take with them to the grave. This guy, it was close to it. 40 years is a whole, almost like it's half a lifespan, really. If you think about it, the average life is probably 70, 80 years. It's a good half a life there. So impressive, very impressive. What else do we have here? You know what, maybe we'll cap in with another Loch Ness Monster one here. So this photo, I've always been astounded by this original photo. It's always been one that has made me believe in cryptids. And I believe it's called the surgeon's photo. So it was within the year 1933, and things are really picking up for the Loch Ness Monster at this point. But taking advantage of the whole craze, there was a hired big game hunter. I think his name is Marmaduke Wetherell, and he was hired to travel up to Loch Ness to investigate the sightings and find this monster. And if he could, although he found no monster, in December of 1933, he did locate what appeared to be its tracks. Enormous footprints on the shore of Loch leading into the water. Unfortunately, when researchers from the Natural Museum examined the tracks, they determined they had been made with a dried hippo's foot, of the kind that were popularly used, pardon me, I can't speak this morning, as umbrella stands. Humiliated, Wetherell retreated from public view. But a few months later, the Loch Ness Monster again was making headlines with a highly respected British surgeon, Robert Wilson, came forward with a picture that appeared to show a sea serpent rising out of the water of the loch. Now again, this is that staple black and white Loch Ness Monster photo that I know you've seen. Even if you're not a cryptid fan, you're a newcomer today, I know you've seen this photo. And Wilson had claimed he took the photograph early in the morning on April 19th of 1934 while driving along the shore of Loch Ness. He said he had noticed something moving in the water, stopped his car to take the photo, and for decades, this photo has been considered to be the absolute best ever evidence of the existence of the sea monster in the loch. But Wilson himself refused to have his name associated with it. Therefore, it simply became known as the surgeon's photo. For years, however, you're always going to have skeptics. That's the thing with any of these cryptid photos and video footage. So they were convinced that this photo was a hoax somehow. But again, no rigorous studies of the image were conducted until we're jumping way ahead here into 1984. There's a man named Stuart Campbell who analyzed the photo in a 1984 article in the British Journal of Photography. Campbell concluded that the object in the water could only have been 2 or 3 feet long at most, and that it was probably an otter or a marine bird. And he suggested it was likely that Wilson knew this was to be the case. But, as it turned out, Campbell was wrong. The object in the water was not a form of marine life. It was a toy submarine outfitted with a sea serpent head that was revealed in 1994 when Christian Sperling, before his death at the age of 90 years old, confessed to his involvement in the plot to create the famous surgeon's photo. A plot that involved both Marmaduke Wetherell and Mr. Wilson. According to Sperling, he had been approached by Wetherell, his stepfather, who wanted him to make a convincing serpent model. Sperling did this, and this model was then photographed in Loch Ness. The picture was then given to Wilson, whose job it was to serve as a credible frontman for the hoax. Apparently, Wetherell's motive was revenge, since he was still smarting from his humiliation over the hippo foot tracks. "We'll give them their monster," and I quote, his son later remembered him saying. So in the original version of the image, the size of this Nessie model in relationship to the Loch, you can tell in this comparison that there's something not adding up, and that's something that has been used and attributed to other cryptid photographs when something is maybe super far in distance and you compare its size to the scale of the background to the nearby rock or anything like that, and it really helps to help hone in. And I guess this image, at least part of it, was cropped to hide this perspective, which kind of reduced the eligibility of people being able to decipher, thus making the monster appear larger than it actually was. So they couldn't kind of hone in on anything really fully, which is definitely it's a dirty little tactic. I've dabbled with Photoshop and graphic design and stuff, so that's sneaky. Yeah, but again, that's just one of the common go-tos when you're dealing with these cryptid photographs. Like I said, you compare it to, okay, you got a tree to the side, you got a rock over to the right hand side here, and you just kind of scale it up and see how big this thing really is. And it's a great way to kind of, perform deduction, I guess you could say is a term. But that's all I got for today. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're having a good April Fool's Day. I hope you're not getting bamboozled too much. Though, again, these were all just kind of like stories that have been debunked as hoaxes and pranks and such. And April Fool's is always a day that gets you, especially when you live in the world of cryptids and you live in a world of geek stuff like movies, video games, and all these companies and news channels are just playing at you. It's hard to kind of trust these sources on this day. Especially because, again, every time these things happen and these sources kind of put stories out today, it just reiterates people's kind of doubt about these things. And you just got to hold true and remember not to doubt these things. Not all of them are true. Not all of them are real. But there's still the possibility and the percentage that some of these photographs, some of these video footages, and a lot of these people's experiences and encounters that they talk about are real. So that's my take for today. Until next time, you know where to find us. CryptidClues.ca is our main website, social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and the Patreon, again, to get ad-free exclusive early episodes. And you can find us at CryptidClues@gmail.com. If you want to say hello, send us an email. So until next time, everyone, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.